If you're fairly new to FPV like I am, you'll very quickly realize that there's a ton of terms to learn. In this video, I'm going to break down 50 FPV terms in less than minutes. Also, if there's a specific term or set of terms that you're looking to understand, check out the description below where I've sectioned off the video by term. Alright, let's jump into it. Number 1 started off pretty simple. FPV stands for first person view. The first kind of set of terms are the different types of flying, which there are 3 kind of generally accepted ones, which is racing, freestyle, and cinematic. FPV racing is pretty self-explanatory, and the goal is really just to do laps on certain tracks as fast as possible, similar to racing in other sports. Freestyle flying is a type of flying where the drone is doing a lot of flips and tricks around various objects in a location, and this is usually done by a more experienced pilot just because you have to have such tight control on your FPV drone to be able to do these maneuvers. Cinematic flying usually consists of large sweeping movements. The shots are usually color graded very well, there's sound design on them, and it's the kind of video that you'd see in a cinematic travel video on YouTube. Next we've got the controls, which consists of pitch, roll, yaw, and thrust. Pitch is when the nose of the drone moves up or down. Roll is when the wings of the drone move up or down. Yaw is when the nose of the drone moves left or right. And thrust is when the motors spin faster or slower, causing your drone to move up or down. The next set of terms are the different ways that you can hold your controller, which consists of 3 common types. You have thumbs, pinch, or hybrid. Flying the drone with thumbs is typically thought of as the easiest way to learn and consists of placing your thumbs on top of the gimbals, which are the sticks on your controller that you move in order to control the drone. Next is pinching, which is where you pinch the sticks with both your thumb and your index finger. And lastly, you have a hybrid of both the pinch and thumb method, which is where you put your thumbs on top of the gimbals, but you also throw your index finger into the mix for extra guidance and stabilization. Next we have the meat and potatoes, which is the drone components and accessories. Radio transmitter or radio, aka the controller, which can come in multiple different sizes and shapes. Next you have your goggles, which is what the pilot's going to put on to be able to see through the camera of the drone. And these are kind of differentiated in 2 main ways, being analog or digital. Analog is the most traditional and common way of flying, which looks like an old fuzzy TV through the pilot's goggles, but also has less latency, which is the difference between what you're seeing through the goggles when you're flying your drone and what your drone is actually doing. That's in contrast to digital, which is essentially the DJI system at this point and allows the pilot to see around 720p in their goggles when they're flying. Lipo batteries are a type of battery which are used to power FPV drones, goggles, controllers, and other consumer electronics, and they come in endless options. One of the most common terms you'll hear associated with Lipo batteries is the cell count, so 1S, 4S, or 6S, and that just describes the number of cells that a specific battery has. Next is the frame or kind of skeleton of the drone, which is what you mount all of the components of the drone to. Typically it can come in kind of a carbon fiber or plastic type of material, and it ultimately dictates the size and shape of the drone. The flight controller, or sometimes referred to as the FC, is really like the brains of the drone and also can help control some of the other components. ESC, which stands for Electronic Speed Controller, is an electronic component of the drone communicating with the flight controller, telling the motors how fast to spin. Propellers, which are also sometimes called props and are pretty self-explanatory, come in multiple different sizes, shapes, and pitches, which is the amount of curve that a specific propeller has. The radio receiver or receiver, also shown as RX, is an electronic component of the drone that takes commands from your radio transmitter or your controller and gives them to the flight controller on your drone, telling your drone what to do. The flight camera is the camera on your drone, which is taking video, relaying it back to your goggles, ultimately allowing you to see when you're flying. That's in contrast to the action camera, which is usually a GoPro or Insta360 attached to the top of the drone, allowing you to capture a higher quality video, and is ultimately what you usually watch when you're watching flight videos on Instagram or YouTube. If you're using a GoPro, you'll find that most people ultimately use ReelSteady, which is a software that stabilizes GoPro footage, though some pilots also use HyperSmooth, which is the built-in proprietary GoPro stabilization software. Next you have the video transmitter or VTX, which takes the signal from your flight camera and passes it to your goggles, allowing you to see while you're flying. Next you're going to have all the acronyms that you might see when you're making an actual purchase, which is RTF, BNF, and PNP. First is RTF, or Ready to Fly, which is a drone typically coming in a kit, and comes with everything that you'll need to actually get into the air. Next is BNF, which stands for Bind and Fly, and is similar to Ready to Fly in that it comes pre-built, but it doesn't come with any of the extras like the controller or the goggles, which you'll need to supply on your own. And the only step to kind of flying is to bind or connect your drone with your controller, hence the name Bind and Fly. Lastly, you have P&P, which stands for Plug and Play. Now this is very similar to Bind and Fly in that it's a pre-built drone that doesn't come with any of the extras like the headset or controller. But the difference here is that you'll have to buy your own receiver and solder it onto the flight controller of your drone. Next are the couple different common types of drones, and the few that I'll cover here are 5-inch, long range, micro, and Cinewoop. First you have your 5-inch drone, 5 inches being the size of the propellers or the props, and this has traditionally been the standard in FPV flown by most of the professional pilots. Next you have long-range drones, which are designed with the purpose of flying longer and farther, and also typically are designed to be more efficient than some of the other freestyle type drones. Next you have micro, which are very small drones, usually with props 3 inches or smaller, and can be flown inside, similar to the Tiny Hawk. Lastly, you have the Cinewoop style drones, which come in multiple different sizes, like 3 or 4 inches. These are flown by pilots trying to get the more cinematic shot and are differentiated by their prop ducts. Lastly, we have a few miscellaneous terms that you'll likely come by very early in your FPV journey. The first of these miscellaneous terms is a simulator, which is a program used on your computer like Velocidrone or Liftoff that pilots use to practice their flying, either racing or freestyle. Next, you have Betaflight, which is a popular flight controller software used to set up, tune, and control settings for your controller, drone, and headset. Next you have rates, which is a set of variables that determines how sensitive your drone is and responds to the direction you're giving it on your controller. Next you have solder, which is connecting 2 pieces of metal using a very hot soldering iron, which melts the solder that quickly dries and creates the connection. Lastly, you have PIDS, and honestly I could probably count on my hand the number of people who deeply understand this, and I would definitely not be on that count. But PIDS stands for Proportional, Integral, and Derivative Gains, and is essentially just another lever that pilots have to tune the way that their quad handles and flies. Hopefully if you made it this far, you learned a new term or two or firmed up your understanding of something that was previously kind of fuzzy or unclear. Thanks for watching, and if you made it this far, you're the GOAT. I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.